Many people ask me lately whether I can give them some tips when they consider purchasing a movable property. There are some websites on the internet providing you with some tips in this regard, but none of them nearly provide the tips I'm about to give you. That is a promise. I formulated these tips from experience I've gained working inside the property industry, of which many others will not give you the inside information for obvious marketing reasons. Here are my 12 whistleblowing tips for potential immovable property buyers. Number 1. Don't buy immovable property on an auction. Why? Many people will advise you to go and buy movable property on an auction sale in order to get a bargain, but I truly hate auction sales. Most of the property complaints we receive originate from auctions, and the Afrikaans proverb goedkoop koop is duur koop, in English, buying cheap results in an expensive buy, is definitely applicable in most of these circumstances. These properties almost always have very high outstanding rates, taxes, and municipal services or levy accounts, and if anyone forcing the sale tells you that they will sort it out for you, they are lying. Besides the issue mentioning further hereunder, which are directly linked to this tip, is the fact that I am not all convinced that it is ethically and morally correct to get another person's property as a result of his or her disastrous reasons for a very cheap price. This is typically what our society should fight against, where one person's misery results in another's wealth. Auction sales probably belong to those who are heartless, and without being superstitious, those purchases are usually cursed in the one or other way in any event. A definite no from me. Number 2. Buy only through a registered estate agent. Why? Try to avoid private sales if you are not experienced and knowledgeable or handling property transactions. Approach a credible registered estate agent and ask them to search a property for you. Go to the Estate Agency Affairs Board, their website. You can find it at www.eaab.org.za, and on their homepage on the right hand side there is a place where you can search both the estate agency name and the estate agent's name. If either one or both are not registered or indicated as invalid, phone the EAB and ask them whether they are registered. Every estate agent must belong to an agency and may not sell property in their personal capacity without going through an agency. If you are satisfied that your estate agent and estate agency are valid, let them look for property on your behalf. Number 3. Inspect the property. This should be logic, but believe it or not, there are still people who purchase a property by simply taking a seller's word for it and looking at a photograph. Never purchase a property without having visited it yourself. Your partner and the rest of your family must also view the property. If for some reason you are unable to view the property beforehand, rather wait to purchase immediately and instead rent in the area you want to buy a property for a short period while looking for the right place. There are just too many good reasons why you must first view a property before purchasing it. Number 4. Know your neighbors. It is so important that you find out and visit your potential neighbors when you view the property. We simply receive too many complaints about people's stay in their new house, which has evolved into terrible nightmare because they are having endless problems with a neighbor. If you reasonably determine that any of your neighbors is going to be incompatible with your lives, simply spare yourself endless trouble and don't purchase the property. Number 5. Avoid new developments. Why? It always seems so nice to purchase a property in a new development, but I have seen too many new properties literally falling apart within the first 5 years. Quality of building has gone astray, and many developers simply don't care about the quality of their workmanship, besides selling as soon as possible and getting out of there. I call it the hit and run syndrome, or the hit and run effect. If you really want to buy a property in a new development, get your own independent engineer to inspect the property for any structural problems, that the foundation is properly packed, the sewage pipe system are flushing correctly and are leak free, the electricity has been correctly connected and according to standards, etc. etc. There are just so many problems we encounter with new developments that you need to be extremely cautious. All the properties have endured the magic 5 years and stood the end of times. With older properties, you can also see any structural problem much easier. I've seen new developments where the whole scheme has literally started to slide down a slope with the first 5 years, just to find that the developer has already been liquidated and that the scheme must now sort out the issue by doing those repairs at a very high increase to the levies. Number 6. Know the trustees or directors and managing agent of the scheme. Before you sign any offer to purchase, meet the trustees or directors and managing agent of the scheme and ask them everything you want to know about the scheme. Your neighbors, the financial position of the scheme, levies and when it might increase and by what estimated amount. If there are any maintenance or repairs problems, etc., inspect the minutes of the scheme's meetings, which will highlight any red areas immediately. Each scheme must have rules. Take time to read through them and make sure you ask questions of any uncertainty. Like for instance, whether you are allowed to keep pets and how you can request permission from the scheme to keep pets before you sign the OTP. Number 7. Measure the size of the home. Have you noticed how properties are becoming smaller and more expensive? There are so many beautiful developments with swimming pools, gyms, squash and basketball courts, play parks, etc. But once you move in your home, you realize for starters that the staircase is not wide enough to move your furniture into the home. The bedrooms are literally just big enough for a double bed, not even your newlywed's queen size, and that you can only move into the shower one way and not turn around above others. Occupants in these places tend to stay there only for a short while before moving out after complaining that they feel somewhat claustrophobic. If tenants complain and can relatively easily terminate the lease to move out of these miniature homes, as owner it is not going to be that easy at all. Number 8. Get your own contractors to quote on repairs. You shall find that the cost of repairing the property outweigh the property purchase price. Rather spend a small amount on getting your own contractors to quote on repairs to the property than asking the seller to do it. The damages inside a home are not going to vanish and will get worse if not repaired in time. Rather budget for those repairs before signing the OTP by a reduction in the selling price than sitting in your lounge watching how plants and mold start to grow in the ever-increasing wall cracks until it collapses, and probably your roof with it as well. And no, these damages are not covered by your short-term insurance and are regarded as uncovered structural damages. Number 9. Get your own electrician to obtain the electricity compliance certificate. Estate agents tend to provide their own electricians to obtain the certificate. But soon you might find that the wiring in especially older homes is extremely hazardous and will result in safety problems. Tip number 10. Make sure that you have obtained the outstanding municipal charges and levies. Before signing an OTP, you must make sure that the outstanding municipal arrears and levies are indeed covered. Too many new owners are faced with additional payments to be made to the municipal and levies, although those costs were supposed to be covered by the previous owner. When purchasing a property on an auction or directly from the bank as a PIP, you must pay those costs before transfer can take place. Don't get fooled, as these amounts can even be as high as millions. Number 11. If a property is occupied by anyone, make sure whether the property is occupied or not. That is very, very, very important. Have you been informed that the property is up for sale and whether they have legitimate lease agreements? Ask for copies of them. If you want to occupy the property yourself, you need to negotiate and inform the occupants that you intend to purchase the property, and they will be requested to leave by a certain date as agreed. There are so many problems we deal with where sellers have discarded the occupants of that the sheriff has failed to inform them that the property is going on auction. It is not that easy to evict occupants if they refuse to leave in time for your occupation. Obtaining a legitimate eviction order will be extremely expensive and take even years to complete. If you still want to sign the OTP for an occupied property, organize with the seller to reduce the selling price to make provision for the potential eviction costs. However, if you start to properly negotiate with these occupants before you sign the OTP, there will be a trusted relationship, and you shall find often that they will leave on time when you want to occupy the property. If anyone tells you that they can get the occupants out quickly, don't purchase that property, and you shall have endless sleepless nights and result in unaffordable money lost. Number 12. Although you never take immediate occupation. Although you might be tempted to take immediate occupation of a premises, there are simply just too many things that can go wrong until the date the property is registered on your name. Rather wait your turn, and you shall find that this wait might save you thousands of rand and time. If you want to take occupation as soon as possible, put pressure on the seller and the conveyancer instead to get the transfer completed as soon as possible. There are various other tips I'll provide to all within time, but the most important tip is probably go with your sixth sense. If a property sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Don't let you be caught by smooth talk by an estate agent or seller, and rather spend a small amount on getting additional advice before you sign an OTP than facing extreme problems in future if you don't. Purchasing a home for you and your family is like agreeing to get married. You are going to be married to that property for many years, and the last thing you want to face is a very costly divorce suit. Selling property has become more difficult, and people tend to take shortcuts all the time to sell property. These shortcuts might be quick now to buy as well, but in the long run you shall be sorry for having discarded these advice that I gave you. We are working around the clock to prevent property injustices for all in South Africa. For further help and assistance, now to become a member of Liberty Fighters Network, please go to our website www.libertyfighters.co.za. Until next time, have a great day.